This
It just
call is
like
being recorded.
Right. Yeah, so
I
we'll just start. We'll just start.
yeah
We were speaking earlier about the gin, right?
yeah amongst other things.
Right. Right. I wanted to ask. Oh, okay. I was wanting to ask you. You said something that I never heard before. It was called a ultra terrestrial.
Ultra
Right.
terrestrial.
Right. And I don't think I'll ever forget that. I've never heard anybody say that before.
Yeah, I just recently heard the word myself, and I thought it was pretty profound. Just the concept of an ultra terrestrial. Before that, I've started studying about interterrestrials as far as inner Earth, and then happened upon that word ultra terrestrial. Like, wow, okay, that's more like interdimensional type being.
Can you explain? Okay, can you explain? Because most people, when they think of extraterrestrial, they think of like, it could be somebody who looks like us even. Like an extraterrestrial could look like me or you, or it could look like some sort of lizard person or something that we've never seen. Something really crazy that stretches imagination. But you're talking
Humanoid.
about something more like ultra terrestrial. Like, are you talking more of like something interdimensional that is like basically like more in the spiritual realm?
Well, yeah, more like an interdimensional being. And I hadn't looked it up yet to see what the actual definition of it is, but it says the interdimensional hypothesis is an idea advanced by ufologists such as Jacques Vallée that says unidentified flying objects and related events involve visitations from other realities or dimensions that coexist separately or alongside our own. It is an alternative to the extraterrestrial hypothesis. So that's what it means. Ultra-dimensional or ultra-terrestrial is more of a term that would describe multidimensional beings that coexist alongside of us in another dimension.
Right. Yeah, that
Which would
that really
explain
gets
how they
me.
could be more involved in our world.
Right. I've spoken to people about some deep conversations on extraterrestrials, and I've always told people like, an extraterrestrial could be humanoid. It could look just like us, and it could be millions of light years away and still look like us. But then again, there could be species on this planet that are terrestrial, but they could be highly intelligent, highly evolved, and look nothing like us. But they might not be extraterrestrial, though.
Right, and we could actually be ultra-terrestrial beings just incarnated in this dimension. So, I mean, we may be getting visitations from family members. We wouldn't realize it because we're not supposed to remember that or know about it. Stretches the imagination, right?
Yeah, definitely. Because in the research culture right now, there's a big talk about the reptilians. Have you thought about that?
Yeah, I've studied up on them. Some. I knew a little about it. There's a lot of different species of reptilian. The common grays that are talked about mostly and have been talked about since probably the 40s or 50s, to my understanding, are actually more like drones. They're not holding the same type of consciousness that me or you or their creators do. From my understanding, the grays that are considered reptilian are, I don't know, more like AI remote consciousness controlled beings. So yeah, kind of hard to describe because I don't really, I mean, I don't know all the details, but that's what I've learned in the past couple of years. And the reptilians are like Dracos. There's like Dracos, there's lizard-esque type beings. I've heard from Donald Marshall, especially he refers to certain type of reptilians as vril beings that are like tall reptoids, like humanoid reptiles, and they're pretty nasty creatures.
Now, this is interesting because right now on the History Channel, they're showing, depictions of ancient astronauts. And Laura Eisenhower is Dwight Eisenhower's great-granddaughter, and she was on the History Channel talking about this stuff, about extraterrestrials and interdimensional.
Oh.
And, yeah, I did it. I'm going to have to send you a link to it. I did an interview with her a few years ago, and me and her were talking about the same kind of stuff. And I watched some of her videos, and she's saying very similar stuff than what you're saying, like about like Draco reptilians and feline extraterrestrials and all stuff. And this stuff, like now in the History Channel, it's like people are talking about this on the Discovery Channel. Like
that really blows my mind. If it's on TV, that's wow. That's almost what we would expect is like disclosure.
Mm-hmm.
I never expected it to be on regular TV. I haven't had cable in over 16 years.
Right. Now this gets into an interesting question. I want to ask you a question. So we became familiar with each other. We were talking about contract stalking, the gang stalking stuff, and people can talk about extraterrestrials on the History Channel, and even the Pope in Rome made a comment. Ratzinger, one of the former popes in Rome, he made a comment that God has other flocks out in the universe. The extraterrestrials are real. Why is it so acceptable that people can talk about ancient aliens on the History Channel, but they're not showing anything on the History Channel about contract stalkers?
Right. Yeah, there's been just very few, I think, news stories, and I was surprised to see it on the news at all about gang stalking because well, I mean, I think it's because the level of consciousness in general and the control grid that basically makes it impossible. I don't want to say impossible because it's not. We are actually breaking through that mind control grid, but for the most part, as far as the larger number of humans' consciousness right now, they can't imagine that being possible. They won't accept it being possible, and like many things that are real, it doesn't fit into their box of reality of what they've been taught, so they're going to reject it automatically. And beyond that, as far as the news is concerned, I mean, the news and television is controlled. So I mean, there may be some things coming through now as the control grid is dismantled, and that's how I refer to it. The terminology I use is the control grid, and I do believe that it's being dismantled as more and more people are waking up and getting to know who they really are and coming into their power. The control that they had, the cabal or whatever you want to call it, or other races, ET races or whatever, had control over the earth. They're unable to have the same type of control they had before because more people are waking up. So I think that's tied in with gang stalking because personally, like, I had a huge spiritual awakening, and I had remembered some things that happened in my childhood that was suppressed memories. I started healing from PTSD, and then the gang stalking started like 3 months after that. So it was like in response to my awakening. you know.
Right, right.
So
That's
it's
interesting.
like
That's interesting.
illegal. It's illegal to awaken. In other words.
Well, I mean, you, it is illegal to awaken because I've seen stuff. I've seen historical events. Like there was a black guy in Mississippi who wanted to go to a university back in the '60s, and it was during the
Mhm.
civil rights era, and they put him in a psychiatric institution and told him he must be crazy because he wanted to go to the
Wow.
university. Yeah, I mean it is illegal to to better yourself, you know.
I can't imagine. Yeah. Um, Interesting you mentioned that in particular because I have some diaries from a woman who lived through the civil rights, and it goes into detail somewhat about how she would go to libraries and ask for certain books, and they would just look at her like she must be crazy.
Mhm.
And she was like an anthropologist and stuff, and according to her writing, so it was really interesting read that I found 2 years back. I'm not sure what to do with it yet, but I think it needs to be read by more people than just me. She knew
Okay.
about what we're dealing with. She was gang stalked, and she died in like 85. But she wrote a little bit about the gang stalking. She said that they were trying to run her out of the country.
Because there's been cases of people who've had to go to different countries, like even not just with the contract stalkers you're talking about, like even back even back in like the civil rights era, people had to leave the country because they were being,
Mhm.
like the COINTELPRO type stuff. But there were some people in Russia who had to come to America because the same thing was happening to them. Like there are people who have to flee their own country. I just talked to
Yeah,
a
and
woman
then
earlier
when
today.
it's all over the place. Do what?
I just talked to a woman earlier today who had to go to Canada.
Hmm. I've heard that no matter where you go, like if once you're in the program, they follow you everywhere. I've heard of just a few people got relief by moving, but for the most part, no matter where you go, they'll follow you. So, or the program follows. Maybe not the particular people, but it'll be new people, same program. So I'd be surprised if they got relief that way.
Right, right. Yeah, it's a hell of a thing. I've been looking at some stuff where, like I'm reading, as I'm speaking to you, like people have been sending me all sorts of emails and stuff like that. And what do you have to say about the stupidity of the court system and the medical field? Like, you have real cases of people that are documented in court of this type of stuff going on, and it's
Right.
on the news. Fox News has a news story on gang stalking, and there's all sorts of people out there.
Mhm.
Like you know,
I don't know
why is
if I'd call
education
it
level?
stupidity when they have the ability to heal people, but it's a business. But also there's the aspect of it's run by the secret societies, the secret infrastructure. So I don't know if I'd call it stupidity. It's on purpose. It's purposeful neglect and purposeful. I don't know what you call it, like a victimization by the system. As far as anybody who uh, thinks outside the box, anybody who's smart enough to figure it out on their own, and they're not part of the infrastructure of the cabal, they get ousted, blacklisted. So we've experienced ourselves, me and my husband have experienced some medical targeting as well, and it's a pretty heartbreaking experience to go through.
Right. So your husband, he definitely believes you.
yeah, he does. He believes me,
Right.
which is
Right.
very rare.
I
I'm very lucky to have him.
I came across a lot of different women who it was a thing to where the contract stalking that was happening to me. Like people were actually approaching friends of mine, approaching women friends of mine, and trying to pay them to like have sex with other people and try to pay like one of the girls they got addicted to heroin.
Hmm.
And yeah, and I don't
Yeah,
even
this
know who
is
these
the danger
I
part
didn't
of
even know
it.
who this I didn't even really know who like this was back I'm like thinking like who the hell are these sick criminals? And
Mhm.
I would have friends of mine who would be getting paid to do stuff. They would tell me about it, like, man, when you showed up, some other people showed up and were telling us to follow you and all this shit, but we didn't want to do it. We didn't want to get involved in it. And
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, fortunately for you, they actually were uh, honest enough to tell you. With the what I went through, nobody told me, and a lot of it was people I didn't know because I had moved to a city where I really didn't know anybody when it started. So I was kind of separated from a lot of my old friends from my hometown and things like that. And um, I could tell I'm very perceptive. I'm very vigilant in general because I've had lifelong PTSD, and so I'm naturally just vigilant. So I could tell I'm literally talented as far as like a little bit of telepathy. I'm not like full on psychic or anything, but I can pretty much tell when things are going down and know people's motivations. And so I could tell that there was some sort of like very expensive defamation campaign in this town and county, especially about me. And it really, really blew my mind when it first started because people were parroting words that I said in my home in privacy and phrases I said the same day that I said them if I went to the store. Um, Someone in the store is standing in line with me, or the person at the cash register would say something, repeat something that I said previously that day, and then it got to the point where they were saying things that I only thought because I decided to try and test it to see, you know, how they're doing it. Are they listening to me or can they actually read my mind? And so I started just thinking phrases and to see if it would be repeated to me, and then it would be. So it got really intense like that. Just I was just I was having constant anxiety and stuff, but I still would go out because I was studying what they were doing. They're studying me, I'm studying them. So um a lot of it seemed to be experimental to try to see what they could get me to do, how I would react. And I'm very in control of myself. I'm very self-aware, so I wouldn't do, any of the suggested things that they tried to get me to do. At first, it started with like buying certain things. I was like, why do I feel like buying that? I get this impulse to buy something that I normally wouldn't buy, and I'm like, okay, maybe this is my instincts telling me, but no, it ended up being the V2K. Um, so but as soon as they started telling me to do things that were not anything like it's not in my character to be argumentative or hateful or harm anyone, right? At all. I'm a very peaceful person and very understanding person. I've never even think to ever harm anyone. And so when those thoughts started coming, I was like, "Who are you, and how did you get in my head? Because this is not me." And I even had some remote movement, like my arms would move, and I did not. It wasn't me that moved my arms, so it really freaked me out. So I thought it was all spiritual at that point. I didn't know about the technology. I didn't know it existed. I didn't know anything about it, so I started doing exorcism, full on, just full on spiritual warfare against it, and that helped immediately. But it was still like 2.5 years before I really started getting some real relief from the entire gang stalking experience from that point. So
Right, right. Now you were saying V2K. I know what you're talking about, but for the people who've never heard of that, what is that? Voice of Skull, right?
That's a term that it's not really my term. It's what people who have been in the program call it. V2K means voice to skull, and that's what they call the technology that allows the perpetrators to speak into someone's mind. But there's another term that I found out just today. I'd have to look it up again. It's neuro. It's more of a scientific name. Neuromodulation is what the scientists would actually call it. Um, neuromodulation. So basically, they are mapping. They're doing a brain mapping in order uh, to use the experiments on a person and to see their reactions. So they have to be able to see like a live feed of brain mapping to see what parts of your brain are lighting up, how you're reacting, and if the program is changing the way you think in any way. Because changing the way you think is a big part of the results that they want, and it's basically retraining the person. I'm not sure what the reason for it is. I think it's different in each person's case. I think that for some people that are very religious or very spiritual, if they're trying to make sure that that person doesn't have a full awakening, they're going to want to map the brain to see if their tactics are working to throw the person off of their spiritual path, to make sure that they're basically their consciousness is being kept at a low level. From that's just my observation, my studies, what I've observed as far as what they did to me and reading about it.
Right, right, right. Have you met a lot of different people who are as informed as you are on the subject? Because I'm familiar with
Mm-hmm.
psychotronic weapons, and I've heard
Mm-hmm.
a lot about them, but I haven't come across too many people who. Because I got to be honest with you, like I've had some fucked up dreams, and I've had a lot of like the groups, like the gaslighting stuff, and the people who just sit there like basically criminals who just pay people just to try to destroy my life, like follow me around and stuff. Like I've had that stuff. But I can't
Mm-hmm.
recall. I've never been sitting there. I've just heard something. I heard somebody talking, but I'm open to it. Like I'm trying to figure, like basically, like what does it feel like? Is what I'm asking. Like, because I've talked to a lot of different people, and it seems like there's people like yourself who've had this and they know about it. And it's like I don't. When people talk about the V2K stuff, it's like I've heard all these people talk about it. It just hasn't. For some reason, it's not something that's happened to me. And so, is it
Right.
frightening or what?
Oh yeah, it's actually terrifying because I know myself very well, and I don't know the reason why. Anybody would not be able to detect it in their own mind. I mean, it may be present in some people that can't detect it, but it may just be that they're not as much of an observer of their thoughts. Um, they may not analyze their own thoughts or, as a habit like I would. I mean, you just have to know yourself. And if you begin to start thinking thoughts of doing things that you would never want to do, and it doesn't even make sense why you would think it, and even like suicidal thoughts and stuff like that, because the suicidal part of the program is a huge deal, because a lot of people do succumb to that and then end up killing themselves because they think those thoughts are their own, but they're not. They're not their own thoughts. That's part of the program. Um, they want to see what it would take to get rid of the nuisance or the dissident or whatever. And the easiest way to do it is to have them kill themselves so that there's no way to trace the murder. So, but yeah, it is terrifying. It is, especially at
Right.
first, but then I really I had to get a grip, I had to get over the shock of it so that I could fight it.
It's actually not shocking to me because there's patents on this. Like, there's psychotronic weapons, and there's patents on the technology. There's actual legal corporate patents on the technology, and there's actually you can actually there's a website you can go to, and you can buy equipment that actually can project sound into people at people and make people hear your voice
Well,
from a distance.
I know that now it's becoming more common to you know, to be able to uncover that, but I had no clue when it was happening.
Right.
And I can go into more detail about who was doing it. It was the sheriff's department in Okaloosa County, and I don't care if they they always get pissed if I mention it, but it was them, and I know that because when I felt the remote the signal on my forehead, I knew the direction it was coming from. And so I went out the next day and walked around and looked to see if anything was odd in that direction. And there was a building that had previously had a business in it. The business was no longer there, and there was these vehicles there. I noticed the vehicles were there every day for like 2 weeks, and just observing. And one day I saw those same vehicles back to back leaving the neighborhood, so I decided to follow them. And they must not have known I was behind them because they went to the sheriff's department. and I was like, wow, oh my God, it's the police. I can't believe that they're the ones doing this to me. I thought it was all spiritual till I saw that, And so yeah, that's what's up.
Right. And I think a lot of these people that are involved, like, you have different levels when it comes to contract stalkers. There's different levels of stalking that occurs. But I've seen on a low level, like, I'll go into some neighborhoods and there'll be people with multiple felonies that were following me around, and I'd be like, some of the people I knew, I'd start talking to them and try to figure out, what the fuck. But other people, I didn't know who they were, and I'd just be sitting there taking pictures of them and taking pictures of their license plates and stuff and studying them, trying to figure out, what the fuck was going on. And
I did that for a while too.
Are a lot of these people snitches, or are they like are they on probation, trying to get off probation, and they're working with the county or something? Like, how does that work?
Well, there's a lot of different kinds, I think, from my observation. Some of them believe that they're patriots helping out the military, and some of them believe that they are helping the police, and some of them, I'm sure, are just part of the corruption, and they want a good relationship with the police, so they, to continue doing their drugs and continue doing prostitution or whatever, they might be blackmailed. I mean, there's a lot of different dynamics, I'm sure, in it, because I did observe some of the ones that followed me were, like the local crackheads or whatever. But I mean, that's a whole other level. I mean, it's all intertwined, but they eventually showed me their true colors of who they were.
Okay, because I've seen neighborhoods where it'd be people who had, like, I know a guy, he was on parole or he was off parole, but I think one of them was on parole, one of them was off parole, but they had been already convicted of rape charges. Like, I'm not saying they broke into some woman's house or raped her, but they had sex with underage girls, and I'm not putting them down. I'm not I don't know what happened, but I know they were convicted of it, right? And so my whole thing is, how can somebody pay convicted rapists to follow somebody?
Well, it takes a sociopath to do what they do.
Right. And then on top of it, they were doing street theater, and like I've seen some weird stuff with the street theater, how they were using like underage girls and old women and middle-aged women, but they were using little kids to do weird street theater and like with pedophiles and people convicted of CSEs next to the kids, and they were making the kids jump up and down and hump up and down. Like, I'm like, what the fuck? like
That's crazy. Yeah, I can imagine.
What the fuck is that about?
Most of mine were like a lot of adults. There was hardly ever any kids involved. Other than when they were trying to use the weapons on my kids, and it just really made them cry. That was all. It just agitated them and made them cry a lot, and that was before I realized what was going on. It was really heartbreaking to go through watching that happen, and But as far as like the street theater, my street theater was a lot like that. Like they would put on, I could tell when the people are acting or whatever, but they would also, like parrot my thoughts and my words and things like that too. So that showed me that I think I was microchipped as a child. Actually, that might be why they were able to do those types of things to me. Um, when I was in kindergarten, no, first grade. I was in first grade and apparently was able to write stories that I shouldn't have been able to write at my age level. It was like too advanced for my age. And I remember I was told I had to stay after school, and I felt like maybe I was in trouble or something because I had gotten into trouble some. And there were these men in suits that came in and talked to me and just like sat and observed me. One of them was speaking to me in my mind and kind of pressuring me to answer back, and I didn't want to. My instincts my defenses went up, and I was like on on alert about that. And then finally he kept asking me to answer him in my mind, and I said finally I said, what do you want? And his eyes got wide. So and then my mom took me to a place, and I don't know what kind of place it was, but I lived close to an Air Force base, so I assume it was on base or had to do with the base, possibly. And they had me do all these puzzles and tests, and I don't remember anything else about it other than leaving the facility. The times that I did leave, I was I would wake up in my mom's back seat, and I had drool on my shirt, and I just remember waking up and I was really out of it. And one of the times, the last time that I was leaving the place, I heard my mom crying, and that's what woke me up. And I was like, "What's wrong?" And she just kept crying. And then I said, "Mom, what's wrong?" And she said, "You'll never have to go back there." And I said, "Why?" And then she just like yelled at me. And she said, "You'll never have to go back there." And then like that was the last time I was there. And I still don't remember what happened to me, but I know that had to be traumatizing because I've had PTSD all of my life since then.
Right.
So
That's
I
terrible.
suspect I was microchipped. I suspect that was part of like an MK Ultra type program. And when I did my own research after my memories started coming back, um, the only program I could find that it would possibly be for the time frame would have been Project Stargate, and that's declassified now. So it would have been some
Oh,
offshoot of Project Stargate, which would be it's actually an offshoot of MK Ultra, or it's based on the findings of MK Ultra, which was supposed to stop in the 70s and 79, and this would have happened in starting in 87 when I was 6. So it would be
now
Project Stargate.
I'm familiar. I'm familiar with Project Stargate through my research of
Mhm.
Project Centerlane, which they're like the same project, damn near. If you read the CIA, like if you go read the CIA PDFs and
Mhm.
Project Centerlane and like Project Stargate, they're all based around parapsychology, right? Like paranormal, like
Yeah.
telekinesis, extrasensory
Yeah, that would have been me
perception,
because I was
right?
gifted in those areas as a child, so I think that's why they wanted
Right.
me.
Right. I you know definitely what you're talking about. Like as soon as you said that Project Stargate, because I was reading, and these are like real. For people who don't know, these are real CIA military documents. These aren't like science fiction books. Like these are real
Right.
documents that the military intelligence have. Like this, like this is like the real stuff. And so that's crazy because the mind
Yeah.
it's funny how the mind control stuff with Project MK Ultra and like Project Delta, and MK Ultra had like 160 sub projects or 150 something sub projects, and it's like insane how mind control and like the paranormal are all connected.
Mhm. Oh yeah.
Like it's really
I
crazy.
know more about it than I remember. I'll be honest with you, I'm still trying to remember some of it, you know, and from what I do remember, I feel like it was enough, and I stopped trying to remember because at some point I just had to heal, you know, and so I just work on healing now, healing myself and just trying to recover from the whole experience. Taking some video, sorry. But yeah, it was pretty shocking to me to realize that I had been involved in something that I didn't know, you know, I didn't have a clue about. So, in all my
It makes
life, I just remember feeling. Sorry, go ahead.
no, no. I just want to add real quick. It makes me really wonder too because I remember when I was a little kid. I don't mean to cut you. I just want to say I'm gonna say this real quick. I remember when I was a child. There was two things that happened. I remember one time
Mhm.
the community educational department contacted my mother, and I was like around the
Uh-huh.
fourth grade, and some guy picked me up and took me to some elementary school, and this was during the summer. There was nobody there, and he had me put some puzzles together or something.
For
Then a
real?
different time, yeah, real talk. And then a different time, these people showed up to my mother's house and said and they wanted to talk to me, and I said I hadn't been coming to school on time, but I had been coming to school on time though, and it didn't make
Oh
sense.
wow.
Yeah, but go ahead though. What are you saying?
I'm really interested because I haven't heard of a whole lot of people that have even a similar story to mine. The only story I've heard that was even remotely close was that really clicked with me was Max Spears when I heard him. Um,
Mm.
so I knew as soon as I heard him talking about the puzzles and the ET and sightings and stuff like that, I was like, this man is telling the truth. And I remember some of this stuff from my childhood, you know, and it was just crazy because like I didn't even find out about him until after he passed. So I feel like I've got robbed of the chance to, you know, possibly speak with somebody who went through some of the same things as me and maybe understand more about my life and my childhood. And I just feel really lucky because there was plenty of times where I thought about ending my life and I didn't, you know.
You thought about killing yourself a few times?
Yes, I did. I struggled a lot, especially when I was younger because of the trauma was so intense that I would check myself into the hospital for periods of time just to make sure that I didn't, you know, harm myself and stuff when I was younger. Several times actually.
Right, right. Yeah, I'm glad you didn't do that. You know, I've had a lot of people, especially a lot of women who contacted me and you know, you're very strong as a person. There's other people out there who aren't as strong as you. And they contacted me and they were saying the same thing that they want to kill themselves. And you know what though, I discovered a lot of the times it was only because somebody would just went and sit down and talk to them or listen to what they had to say. They didn't have anybody they could talk to.
Yeah, I get
And
that.
you know what I mean? It's like there was some girl who was being followed around by all these people, and she kept telling people, and she was going to kill herself because she said nobody would listen to her, and they didn't believe her. And like, how stupid are these people out here that they can't just sit down and listen
Right.
to what somebody has to say? You know?
That's really the only good thing about any kind of therapy or, you know, psych ward or whatever. That was the only thing I really got out of it was, and even there, um, it's hard to find someone that'll really listen. So I would go in and do my art and stuff like that and just kind of try to gather myself together to face the world again. But really, I didn't know I was struggling with so much suppressed memories until I finally awakened in 2015 and started remembering and putting two and two together. And I was literally like, there would be these flashes of my memories coming back, and I would just gasp. I'd just be like, oh my gosh, I remember. I remember what happened now, you know, and I'm still blocking what went on at the facility during those times. But like, for instance, if I talk about it like right now, I'll get a really loud um, uh, frequency in my ear. I'm still a little bit puzzled about that, but I still get those and occasional directed energy punishment as part of the program or whatever. Um, they were pretty pissed at me because they even tried to give me cancer at one point. They were flying drones over me, and I could feel them hitting me with the directed energy in my breast, and then I had this like cyst that had just swelled up to the size of a golf ball. I'm assuming it's a cyst. I was not about to go to the doctor because within 2 days I got a free certificate for a mammogram out of the blue on Facebook, and I was like, that's just too much, you know. And it felt like a setup. It felt like they were trying to set me up with more um, sickness. So I figured I was going to take care of it myself. So I literally just killed it on my own with baking soda. I just read up about it. I took baking soda and water and fasted and took some supplements. And the gang stalking got really, really bad because it was like I just figured out everything they were trying to do. Anytime they tried to do something to me, I cut it off. And, you know, it never came to fruition because, I don't know, I'm like telepathic. And how are they supposed to beat me when I just know what they're doing, you know? So they tried to kill me in different ways. There was plenty of times I got run off the road by gang stalkers, and it was pretty intense.
Yeah.
But it's calmed down a lot now. It started to chill out in 2017, and
I was
like
I was
the
in North
day of the
Muskegon.
inauguration.
I was in North Muskegon. I was in North Muskegon earlier, and I was with my sister and some friends, and there was this long road that we were going down, and it was like nighttime. The road we were going down, some woman allegedly was shot in the head 4 times on the road or something, or who knows?
Wow.
Maybe they dumped her body off there. Who knows? But I was like, man, this is a long road, and I was like looking, it was way out, because in Michigan, like when you get out of the country in Michigan, it's like the avenues in the inner city. They just keep going and going and going and going, you know. And I'm the type of person, if I don't know an area, I don't like to be there. Or if I'm not, you know what I mean, if I'm not familiar, then I was like, man, I gotta get back to. I was like, yeah, if I'm gonna be out here, I gotta have a gun. You know what I mean? You know, if I gotta be out here, I gotta have a shotgun or a pistol or something. That's the type of thinking you have. It's you know, because there's wolves and stuff out there and bears and stuff probably.
Oh yeah, I'm in Northwest Florida, and there's some pretty thick woods out this way. So I know what you're talking about for sure. We got bears.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever been to Michigan?
No, never been to Michigan.
Oh, you're lucky.
I think the furthest north I've ever visited was New York City.
Have you ever been out west? Have you been to California?
No, I've never been to Cali.
Oh, really?
I visited
Wow.
I visited Texas when I was little, but I've never been to California.
Okay. See, the feeling that the vibration that I get from you is you're a very open-minded person. Obviously, you are. You know, and you're into like spiritual, you know, metaphysical type stuff. And there doesn't like that seems to be more out west or in the south. Sometimes on the East Coast, but usually people who are open-minded like that in this country are on the West Coast or like in the South somewhere.
I'm definitely
you know what I mean?
different. In this area is definitely different.
Florida,
But
right?
That's probably why I'm here. I'm meant to be here so that I can have that vibration here, Northwest Florida. I'm like right on the Gulf Coast.
I was a big researcher for many years. I was doing a lot of, I used to love doing research on like the 70s and the 60s,
Mhm.
and I didn't realize it at the time, but I used parapsychology at the time because there's something called retrocognition, which means you have the ability to look into the past and figure things out, and
Mhm.
precognition is the ability to look into the future. And I discovered I have a gift for figuring events out and things that happened a long time ago. You
That's
know,
awesome.
yeah, I did that stuff for years.
I'm getting better at that myself, like what we were discussing earlier with
Right. You
the
ever?
Tate murders.
Yeah, the Tate murders. Oh my God, I used to spend hours. Like I used to love learning about the 60s and stuff, and I'd try to get old phone books and get old phone records from the 60s and like figure out who all went to what school, like who all went to this school back in, who was all in the ninth grade back in 1966, like stuff like that. And people would be like looking at me like, man, you're crazy. Like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? But I would do research and figure stuff out. You know?
Yeah. And it's almost like you get a gut feeling, and I've even gotten a gut feeling about a keyword to look up when I'm researching something like that, and it turns out to be related. Just stuff like that. It just helps solve the mystery. Scooby-Doo. But yeah, I love research. I've always been a researcher. That was one of the reasons why I thought, well, gee, that must be why I'm a researcher. That's why they're stalking me or whatever. They think that I've uncovered something that's true. And what I didn't realize at the time was that it was me. I was the secret that they were trying to cover up. I was the secret because had been in a program that I didn't even remember. But yeah, and being a Stargate kid, that has a lot to do with like telepathy and you know extra natural abilities, which are really natural abilities. They're really just what humans would be capable of if they were not suppressed and controlled. So I think everybody does have those potentials, and it's just that I was just in touch with that potential early on.
Right. Right. Most definitely. That's probably why, I think I realized, like, a lot of the people who are being harassed are usually people who are right brain thinkers, who are articulate, abstract.
Mhm.
Like, I even created a little formula I call abstract intellectualism. And, it's like about not being, like, you're not just trying to, go along to get along. You're trying to figure
Mhm.
your life out. You're trying to figure new things out. And it's just like in school. You know how bullies pick on people who are different?
Yeah.
It's like the same sort of thing.
In
You
this
know?
case, it's a multidimensional attack
Right?
because we're multidimensional thinkers. So.
Right. Right. Right.
Oh yeah, it's
Multidimensional
all about
thinker.
the change though. They won't be able to stop the awakening. You know, it's happening whether they like it or not, really. And I think that's why,
That's,
for me, the
I'm
game
not
stalking
saying.
did
I think
come
that's
down.
not going to stop my awakening. I'm still reading and studying. So you know. That's why I don't get a lot of these schools and colleges. People sit at a desk their whole life just for a piece of paper, and then they can go do their profession, pay their taxes, work, and it's like, is it really worth it? You know, it seems like
I
they're
mean, some of
playing
us
the fun.
are just born with the knowledge or born with the capability of downloading the knowledge. We can just grab it out of the ethers, just
Right.
the way our mind is.
it's like they want people to sit through all these little hoops and all this stuff, and it's just like, what the fuck?
It's a
Like I
hamster
always tell,
wheel. It's to keep us busy.
yeah, it's like I always tell people that, it's not my circus and it's not my monkeys. You know what I mean? Like I don't, it's not my monkeys, not my circus. I don't know what's going on.
Right? Yeah, my PTSD was so bad and my anxiety attacks were so bad that I couldn't complete college, and I just chose self-education, because for me that's just, it happened naturally. So I really did try though, but I literally ended up in the hospital with a panic attacks that were so bad. And it wasn't being in a classroom, being around people. It was like deadlines. I had a deadline. I'd really get chest pain and stuff. I just couldn't do the structure of school. I have to be free to learn my way, But I'm both sides of the brain. I'm artistic and scientific, and I've always been that way. Which my mom used to say that she thought that was weird, that I was really into science and space and astronomy, and I was also very artistic and could create a lot of interesting things at a very young age. So.
Right. Oh yeah. We'll have to keep in touch and come back with. Let me ask you this. I forgot. I want to ask you this.
Okay.
What do you think? Okay, let me ask you this. I was reading a study about juvenile delinquents, and it was saying that this was back in this was a few decades ago, but the study found that juvenile delinquents that are hyper aggressive, if they're placed in a room that's painted pink, their aggression goes down drastically.
Huh. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, this is based on color perception and how colors affect people. And, we've been doing, people keep talking about, oh my God, these people are following me around wearing a certain color. Don't you think colors have to do with brain waves, neuro-linguistic programming?
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah, I've noticed that with mine. They'd go and be wearing red shirts. They did a whole Santa Claus theme one time, for 2 weeks, and it started with a guy riding by, and this was not during Christmas at all. This was in February this year, actually. So a guy rode by with a Christmas hat or Santa Claus hat on, and he was glaring at me, and then I'm like, okay, whatever, that might just mean that he's the guy that has Coke or whatever, right? I didn't know what to think. So I walked to the store, and on the way there and on the way back, all these old men with white beards driving red trucks drove by real slow. And, I'm a friendly person. I'm from a small town and stuff, so I always wave, even if it's going to be a gang stalker. I'm just like, hi, whatever. And so, but yeah, they'll wear all red shirts and stuff like that. So I don't know what the red thing is about, but I know red, they use red to entice a bull, to kind of agitate. So maybe it has something to do with that. I've noticed that there would be teams of vehicles that had, well, besides the Freemasons emblems, they would have teams of vehicles that had Seminole tags, the Florida Seminoles, and Braves. There would be Brave teams, and just I don't know, they use tags a lot of time, license plates, I noticed, but also sometimes stickers on the cars, or there would be, when it was a CIA theme or what somebody might perceive as FBI, but I thought CIA, they all wore these reflective sunglasses that were exactly the same. And so yeah. Pretty trippy. I mean, who needs drugs, really? Who needs drugs when you have reality?
I found that a lot of times people who involved with the gang stalking and stuff, like they're instructed a lot of times to put on glasses anyway, because the glasses are kind of intimidating to most people. Like, if you don't know what's going on, and a bunch of different people just start following you with sunglasses, a lot of times you're gonna be like, what the fuck? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, especially if all the glasses match, because that's really unusual, you know. In a
Right.
normal scenario, if people are wearing sunglasses, well, it's probably because the sun's out. But I would notice they were doing it with it overcast as well. But all those sunglasses matching is just really odd. It's like, what do they do? Just like meet up and pass out a box full of glasses to these guys, you know? But it was extra difficult for me. I would say difficult, but like it helped. It actually helped me get through it. The fact that I have some telepathic abilities, because I could feel their intentions. You know, I could feel what was going on, and so that always, you know, my intuition or whatever, my abilities gave me a heads up on, you know, when it was going on. But that also made it extra aggravating because or agitating, because when you you know, normally not notice things, I would notice things. I notice things really easily, so yeah, it was it made it more difficult, but at the same time it made it easier for me because I knew what, you know, what was happening. Eventually I figured it out, especially when I started finding the patents for the technology. That really helped me wrap my mind around what was happening. It's like, okay, this is, you know, there's evidence of these things. You know, it's not just, it was supposed to make me seem like I'm crazy if I talked about it, but at the same time, you know, I compiled some evidence that would help me explain. But then I didn't tell anybody because I also knew that they were trying to push me into a scenario where I would go to a doctor, I would go to somebody and try to make a report. So I didn't do any of that because I have a family, and I have to, you know, I stuck by my family. I wanted to make sure that nothing would jeopardize my children. So I just kept to myself and handled it all spiritually, and I still believe in handling it all spiritually. So I have my ways, and now it's, you know, I've refined it down to very simple prayer, and I burn sage, and I take olive oil, and I bless my property, and that they stop. And every once in a while they try again, and I do my blessings, and they stop. So.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, you just gotta keep on trying. You know, like you're a spiritual person. You know, you pray a lot and stuff. It's like there's a lot of stuff that I work on that doesn't go right, but then I'm thankful for all the stuff that does go right. You know.
Mhm. Yeah, prayer
You
itself
know.
is a technology. I mean, that's
Yeah.
that, you
Yeah.
know, it's our best weapon against them is love. Honestly, it really is, because if they can't bring you down to their level, then they have to go away. If you're emanating a frequency, and it's all about the frequencies, their weapons are about frequencies, and the whole thing is, you know. But if you're emanating a frequency that is higher, and they can't stop that, then it's going to affect them in a way that is undesirable to the program. So I think that's how I was able to get it to stop for me. They lost too many of their people to, because I literally, like, I learned how to set their minds free from the mind control. I realized that's what was happening. And yes, it involves entities too, but, you know, people are very logically minded, and you'll have to, you know, explain it in the way of like the technology. Um, you can literally train your body to send out a frequency that will break their frequency of mind control, so the person is, you know, they can go about their way. They don't have to follow you at that point.
Mhm.
So their reaction to that at first was they were frustrated, and then eventually they just accepted that they just cannot beat me. So, which is great. It makes me really happy. They sent me everything they could possibly. They did everything they could possibly do, and I beat it all. And I'm still here, and I still got my family. I still got my home. I'm very happy about that. It was difficult, but I'm getting through it, man.
Right on, right on. I was gonna say, I think that this would be a really good point to come to a break, and then perhaps we can continue tomorrow night or the night after
Sure.
for a
Yeah,
part
it's
two.
getting late.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah, and
I'm
it's
done.
gonna take, we'll be able to go over this, we'll review this together or whatever. That's something, then we'll put it, this is a really good interview. That's what I'm saying. It'd be a good point to stop now, and then we'll come up with some new. We'll look it over and then find some new points to touch on, and we'll come back with a part 2, and then hopefully even a part 3.
Okay, I'm down.
Okay,
Let's do
but
it.
listen, I'm gonna call you right back on the phone. Like after we hang up, I'm gonna call you back on the phone just to say goodbye to you, just me and you. You know.
Oh yeah, okay, 'cause this is recorded. That's cool.
Right. So, okay, I'll call you. I'll talk to you in 1 second.
All right. Bye.
Okay. Bye.